you've just enlisted to the Ukrainian military. And at this point, you are an infantryman. You completed all your training, you went through basic infantry school. Now that you've gotten to your unit, you get a war note. You're gonna be shipping out in a couple days to the front line for a rotation. You're gonna rotate a team off for 1 week and then head back to the rear after your time is done. Your first instinct might be, okay, am I going to kill any Russians? Am I going to get shot? Well, the stats of that are pretty alarming, at least from the Russian military doctors when they gave the information about what kind of casualties are coming into their hospitals. 4% were gunshots, 20.5% I believe was artillery, and 3/4 of it were FPVs, Mavics, drops, all that stuff. So if you're thinking that the most difficult part isn't when you're on the position, it is getting to and from the position, then you're right. So now it's T-minus 2 hours before you're going to begin the operation, or at least the movement to your defensive position. Within 10 kilometers of the front line, you're pretty safe. You're going to be eating hot dog, you're going to be drinking coffee with all the other soldiers coming to rotation or coming off of it. You got all your stuff on, about 100 pounds of gear. Your only risk at 10 kilometers, you're not going to be hearing artillery. You're not going to be seeing FPVs, most likely. Your biggest risk is going to be FABs or CABs, which are from the Orlons, which are above you. So Orlons are reconnaissance drones that are up in the air, and they operate pretty much all over the battlefield, but including the rear parts. And they are just looking for large targets. That's pretty much the only risk at that point. Now, it's time to go and drive to position. You get into the car, you start driving. Within 6 kilometers of the front line, you're going to start to hear some artillery positions or tanks firing at the enemy. You're not going to be receiving much incoming, if any at all, because 6 kilometers of terrain, there's a lot of hills, there's a lot of stuff in the way that even mortars can't get over that hill, that lip. Now, within about 4 kilometers of the front line, that's where you can expect possible mortar strikes, 120s, 80s, 81s, 82s. And FPVs as well. So that's where the war kind of opens up, within 4 kilometers. But usually within 4, you're not going to be taking too much incoming. Right when you get to 2 kilometers of the front line, everything is looking at you, everything is in the game. You get dropped off, and you are dropped off not in the middle of nowhere. You're dropped off right next to Mavic positions, right next to SPG gunners, heavy machine gunners, sometimes tanks, and mortar positions. This is where the majority of the indirect fire and Mavic drone type weapons are operating. So you get there and they drop you off, get all your bags from the back of it, car drives off, you're there. Now the problem is that the warning order that you've got, it's outdated. The situation on the battlefield changes constantly, and the day before, a Russian jet flew by, launched a couple cluster munitions, dropped a bunch of those leaf mines, the PFMs, and they settled on the ground. So this makes it so that you have to take the trails. All of your training for taking wedge formations or tactical columns, you can't do that. You have to walk in a single file line, you and your team, to your forward position. First thing you do as soon as you set off on the ground is get into concealment. You're gonna get into the wood line and start walking down a trail, following one person, dispersion, just doing the infantry tactics you learned. Within 2 kilometers of the front line, everything's watching for you. You are being watched by a Russian Mavic pilot. And within 10 minutes of you being dropped off, you're still outside because you're trying to get to your position, walking very slowly, making sure not to step on any mines. You start receiving some orders. You're in the vicinity, about 100, 150 meters away, but you don't know if they're targeting you. So you and your team make a dash to the nearest position. You find a Mavic team and you run in there. And once you get inside, you kind of wait out the bombardment. The Russians are still trying to target you. They know that there are 10 people inside this hole now. They know that the Mavic position is there for a year now. They're trying to cave in that hole, and you're just gonna be waiting there, getting bombarded. You talk to the Mavic pilots for about 30 minutes as you wait out this bombardment. Every minute there's another round that comes in. You show them the map that the TOC had given you, the commanders in the back, and they say, that map isn't exactly right now. Here's the latest information as a Mavic pilot. And they give you the information. They say, hey, there's a position here, friendly position here, and we saw some recon dudes go this way. Also, a couple days ago, we had a Russian saboteur team that were 100 meters away from our position. They reached in there, some SPG gunners were fragged, and then the group next to them ended up taking those Russians captive. And the Russians had said, oh, we're just looking for a drone. We're a drone recovery team. We're not recon. But we all know what it actually is. So that's the latest info, is that it's a gray zone. Within 2 kilometers of the front line, you are entering gray zone. So again, as soon as they got there, they were targeted because they were seen by Mavic. The entire force line is just scalped. They get out of their hole and they decide to go and make that trek a little bit further. And they've only made 100 meters of progress so far. They still have 1.9 kilometers to go. Because of all the stuff on their back, because of how slow they have to move, because of the mine threat, they were only able to make 100 meters within 10 minutes. They start walking, 100 more meters go by, 10 more minutes, they start getting targeted again. And they have to find another hole. But this time there isn't holes nearby. They run forward a little bit more, they run to the sides, everybody's dispersed. And it's just reaction to indirect fire at that point. They get down every time they hear a whistle. Eventually one of your teammates finds a abandoned hole and all of your team runs into it.
Yep.
Привіт,
Давай,
забігайте, заходьте
Come on,
всередину.
come on. Yep.
No Mavics yet, no drone drops yet, thank God. And as you're in that hole waiting, you realize, okay, every time we go outside, they find us. You gotta be a little bit more careful. So you remember that you have a scarf, a green scarf in your backpacks. So you decide to put it over your head as you walk, so that way you're a little bit more concealed, especially if you stop moving. So after another 30 minutes, you go to the entrance of your hole, you start hearing from Mavics. Is there any drone drops trying to look at me? Nothing. No indirect fire for the last 5 minutes. I think we're good to go. So you put on the scarves, and you walk. 20 minutes goes by, and it seems like the camouflage is helping a bit. Now you're about 1.5 kilometers away from the zero line. About 8:30 or so a.m., you start receiving indirect fire again. You got some drones flying over, FPVs that are just passing by. They haven't spotted you yet. They seem to be trying to target something a little bit more behind you, maybe the position you were just at. You find a hole that has some machine gunners in it and a 60 millimeter mortar. And as soon as you get in there, the bombardment starts coming and you wait another 30 minutes. It's typical. Everybody's used to it, but you ask them for more information, trying to get some more information that the TOC maybe didn't know. What is the reality on the ground? So you show them the map that you have on your tablet, and they laugh at it. They say, this is not what it looks like anymore. There's no more buildings. The trails are all bombed up. They're mined here. They tell you that a week ago, they had some other infantrymen from a different unit that passed by, and they were machine gunners, and they were trying to find their way forward. And before they left to go forward to their positions, they exchanged numbers. So before you and your team then go on to trek on some more, they contact that team and try and get a better understanding of what the situation is, even just 200 meters ahead. They find out, hey, it's pretty safe here. It looks like there's recon position to the right of them. It's been pretty quiet 200 meters away. They haven't been targeted. It's a little bit more dense foliage and a little bit more hills, so they can meet up at their machine gunner position. You get out of the hole and you start walking towards that position. You get to that position. You're just about a kilometer away from the position you're supposed to get to, which is awesome. And you walk into the hole. You greet them. They give you some chai, some coffee, a couple energy bars because they know you're going to be going a little bit more forward. And you start talking. And during this conversation, machine gunners say that a couple days ago there's another infantryman team that had passed by, and they exchanged numbers, but they didn't hear anything from them. They don't know what happened to them, but they did go to this position. They show you on the map the position that those guys went to, and it might be a good idea to check in on them. Maybe they got something, more information. You're pretty tired, it's a lot of weight on your back, and there's a couple Mavics that are flying by too. Nothing hovering over you just yet. It doesn't look like anybody caught you, but they're flying by. You don't know if it's friendly or enemy. You have no idea. And then the machine gunners get the call to go on a fire mission. They got to fire an objective. They get on the machine gun, they start firing. You're still in the bunker waiting. As you're waiting, some mortars start dropping a couple hundred meters behind you, and it starts creeping up towards that position as they're firing the dish gun. So as it starts getting closer, machine gunners runs back into the hole, and they say, it looks like they caught us. Sorry about that, but we had to do our job. It's all right. You know, it's a war. And you wait another 30 minutes until you leave. So the bombardment stops, and you walk out from there as soon as you can. You don't want another fire mission to delay your timing.
That's new.
You have to make about 500 meters this time. It's gonna be rough. You're probably gonna be passing through a lot of unknown territory. Maybe there's positions that are burnt out. Maybe there's casualties. Maybe you're gonna take a casualty, but you gotta stay in that single file path. You have to take it slow because the PFM threat, and you walk forward. So about 200 meters in, they hear a drone that's directly above them, a map, and they don't know who it is, but it's hovering. So you're a little confused. You look up at the sky, and see, oh, yeah, there's the Mavic. You see through the branches. So you take a look at it. You're like, I don't know if I should shoot it. It looks like the Mavic is facing forward towards the Russians. Okay, well, maybe it's friendly. It doesn't look like there's a bomb on it. So you continue walking. Another 100 meters, the drone is still hovering there, and it's probably just a reconnaissance pilot. It's probably just me a year ago flying a Mavic, hovering over a forest, looking at the Russians. And about 100 meters away from that infantryman spot that you want to go and check out, there's a PFM on the trail, so you have to take it different routes. And on this path that you're going down, you end up getting a little bit lost. You're looking at the map, you're exposed, you know, you're maybe crouching down with your team. You start huddling up together because you don't know what's going on. You got one person who's looking at the air, is there a Mavic above us, is there anything? And there's FPVs flying over, but they haven't seen you yet, thank God. And the entire time you're hearing mortars hit in front of you, about 500 meters ahead, as well as behind you. And eventually you guys come up with a plan. It took about 3 minutes of staying out there in the open, but felt like forever. And now that you've dead reckoned the area, you kind of understand where you're at, you decide to go a little bit further. And then about 50 meters away from you, you hear a Mavic that's flying by from the Russian side towards your position.
I would have kept going, man.
Yeah, keep going.
Yep.
Yeah, because right now they stuck.
You don't know if it's a returning Mavic pilot or if it's a Russian one. but you don't want to take the chances. So nobody stops, nobody's like looking at it, you just hear it, and you run to that position. And during that run, there's a big piece of shrapnel on the ground. One of your team members during the sprint ends up slicing his leg on the shrapnel. So you put your arm around him and help him get to where you think that hole is. But as you reach there, you find out that the position is burnt out. There's nobody here. What the heck? And it also doesn't have any overhead concealment. It's just a hole. So you get inside there because it's better than nothing. You get your scarves on, and you know that this isn't a place that you can take cover. There's Mavics flying everywhere. If anybody finds you, if a Russian pilot finds you, they're gonna start doing drops and maybe FPVs. So one of your team members decides, okay, I'm gonna go out, try and find that group of infantry that we're trying to find. So he goes out, about 10 minutes later, he returns, he says, yeah, they're just over about 100 meters this way. So you and the rest of your team fall in, going that same path that he found, and you end up reaching that group. And as you enter that hole, you find 2 casualties. You find 2 guys wrapped up with gauze. One guy's got a tourniquet. He's been out for like a day. And they ask you, are you our replenishment? Are you guys rotating us up? Is this what's going on? You say, we're not even part of the same unit, bro. Like, I don't even know what to say. But they ran out of radio batteries for a while. The Russians have been jamming it as well. But the Russians, the last 2 days those guys have been there, have been jamming the radio signals from their bout bank. So they weren't able to go and say we have casualties. And they've been stuck in this hole. So you put on your radio and you try it. Luckily, there's no jamming at that point. You're able to contact a team that's in the rear, one of your leadership, and tell them, hey, there's a group of guys here that need some water and food and medical supplies, and they gotta get rotated off. And that team of infantry are super thankful. They're like, oh, thank you for coming, really appreciate it. And you give them the energy bars that those Mavic pilots have given you. You give them some water and food out of your own pack, and you gotta leave. The activity right now, there's no bombardment. We gotta head out now. We have to move while there's not much going on. So you tell them that, you go outside, you hear a couple Mavics passing by, but okay, it looks pretty safe, and you continue on to where you think you're supposed to go. But now that you've went 100 meters the other direction, you don't know where your path is. You barely even know where you are on the map, but you have to kind of guesstimate. So who's got the blue armbands, who's got the blue tape on their helmet? You're hoping you find them instead of red. And you continue on. 100 meters into it, you're kind of lost again. You start huddling up. Okay, where are we? Where should we go? We're already lost again. And you hear a Mavic come in from the Russian side and stops, starts hovering over you. It's wanting to drop on you. You see a bomb on it. There's no time to go and fire at it. You got to disperse. So everybody disperses. There's no holes around you. You're starting to panic a bit. And one VOG lands right where you guys were kneeling. Luckily, all of you guys were in the prone. You didn't receive any casualties from that, but when you look up again to the drone that's targeting you, and you see a second VOG. Oh, God. So you have to run around a little bit more. Everybody's kind of dispersing some more. 2 of your friends are huddled up together underneath a tree, the only tree that has a little bit of shrubbery on it. And it drops again, but it's done. You hear the little thump on the ground and, okay, we gotta go. So you and the other guy end up linking together and you start running that direction that you wanted to go. And the other 2 guys are taking a different route, but they're, you're within shouting distance saying, hey, we're going this way, okay. And you're going 2 different directions, 100 miles per hour, don't care about the mines anymore, we gotta get to position. And as you get 200 meters away from where you think you're supposed to be, mortars start coming in. There is no valid position here. There's nothing that you can take cover in. You have to keep going. So you keep going, you keep running, and eventually you find a clearing in the forest where you see a position 100 meters across the forest, where you see a 60 millimeter mortar that's placed looking at the Russian side. So, oh God, I think that's a friendly position. You jump in there. There's a couple guys there that are clearly, they haven't been off the position for a month now. They've been stuck there. They've really grown out beards. They're looking all muddy. They're looking thirsty, looking a little wired, the eyes, but they're calm. These guys are experienced veterans, been there for a while, and you jump in that hole with them, and they offer you some food, but it's expired spam, but that's all they've been eating the last week. They ran out of supplies long ago. And they say that, hey, just wait here. This is a really bad time of the day to go move. Even 100 meters, this is really bad. So just stay here with us, and yeah, we'll just be doing our fire mission every once in a while, but otherwise, it should be pretty much as safe as any position could be on the 0 line. So you're chatting with them, you bring out the map once again, you're like, where am I right now? And they show exactly where they're at. You're about 400 meters away from where you thought you were, but they give you the update that 400 meters away, there's nobody. We haven't heard anything. Like, we don't think that there's anybody there at all. That position you want to go to, it could even be Russian at this point. We have no idea. So if I were you, if you don't want to risk getting ambushed, I would just go 100 more meters, try and find a hole, put some camouflage over it, and call it a day. I mean, that might be your best bet. Given their advice, you have to wait another 8 hours at their position because of all the threats that happen during daytime. That thermal FPV team that your commanders have warned you about, those guys are the least of your worry this far forward. I mean, you got to move during nighttime. That's the only way to gain any movement without getting hit. So you take the time to go and take a further look at the guy who sliced his ankle with the shrapnel on the ground. And it looks okay. There's a little bit of bleeding, but the gauze had stopped it, and There's no way you're gonna leave because of that. That's a pretty small wound given infantryman tasks. We're alive, we're doing okay, we made it this far, and we'll do our best to go and find that team that we need to rotate off, wherever they are inside this vicinity. So skipping ahead to sunset. Sunset's starting to set in, the Mavics are now switching between thermal and daytime, and you have about 30 minutes to get to a further position before thermal is being used completely, and that's, you're gonna get caught. So you go outside the hole, you're hearing from Mavics, seems all right, and you guys start patrolling pretty slowly, pretty carefully, trying to find, is there anything on the ground, make sure we're not gonna twist your ankle, that would suck. Especially for exfilling, because you have to do the whole thing again later, a week later. And the lead guy in your patrol ends up finding a little burnt out bunker about 150 meters ahead. And as you're walking towards it, you start receiving machine gun fire that you don't know if it's directed at you guys or not, but it's cracking over your head, and you got to get to that hole right now. And it's clearly Russian. You can hear the rifles go up, a couple hundred meters ahead of you. You're not sure exactly where, but you run to that hole, and okay, you got to dig in here. You find out that the hole has been also damaged by artillery. It's been damaged by drone drops and such. There's a lot of stuff all over the place. But inside that hole, there's a couple cases of water, which is great, awesome, because you didn't bring enough water. You already handed some water to the other guys. And there's spoiled food everywhere. It's all been smeared everywhere, maybe from a bomb that it hit and burst open the cans, and then rats are feasting on it. You start digging out of it because this bunker only has space for about 3 people to sleep comfortably. And during this entire time, of course, because you're receiving small arms fire, either indirect, kind of like just guided by Mavics, or direct, like people saw you. You have one guy who's outside just scanning, making sure, is everything okay? Is there anybody watching? And right before you're about to have a snack, before doing night watch and having these rotations of night watch, you hear an FPV cross by and then start circling your position. They know that you're inside there. So the guard that you had outside, he runs inside, hey, there's an FPV. He's circling us. You start to hear it a little bit more, and then within no time, the first right outside your hole, about 2 meters away. A little spooked by that, but there's not much you can do. And the night pretty much goes like that. There's artillery bombardments, there's some gunfire, and that was the infill. That is the infill. That's kind of typical to what I've heard from my friends who experienced it, typical to what I've experienced and from the Ukrainians that I talked to that have done the same thing. When we're working with FPVs and Mavics, there's been a lot of times where we drop food and supplies to Ukrainian soldiers that have been there for a couple of weeks. And this is the reality of Ukrainian infantrymen. There's nothing that you can do to change it. They deal with this all the time. And the exfil is even harder because within a couple of weeks, the Russians are moving slowly. The Russians push even just 100 meters to the west. That can change your entire plans and the whole scenario of the battlefield. 100 meters, because it locks down these infantrymen on the zero line from being able to attack, from being able to get resupplied. So I just want to give you guys a little bit more perspective. This isn't saying anything about the war. It's not saying anything about the Ukrainian military. They're doing what they can. They're the only ones on the ground. They built their military up the last 3 years into a military that can successfully defend advances from the Russian military that has significantly more manpower advantage. The Russians that I see on my Mavic doing these same rotations that I'm talking about, most of them do not make it. They're not doing resupplies by drones as much as the Ukrainians. They're sending out guys with white bags, white plastic bags to run into the battlefield. There's probably about half of them that reach even close to where they're supposed to deliver their supplies. They are hurting. So I just want to mention that. I want to give a little bit more perspective into what you would experience as the Ukrainian soldier and just how dangerous it is. But that is just an infantryman's life. It doesn't matter what war infantrymen are needed, no matter the threats. The drones, the FPVs, they're needed. A man with a rifle, sitting in a hole, dodging bombs, saying, this is my area, and anything that I can see, I will engage. That is so important. Even 100+ years later, since trench warfare was widely used, we're still doing it. And it's because a man with a rifle is super important. So to any infantrymen out there, I was an infantryman back in the past. I lived in caves. I was an infantryman in the Marine Corps. Really appreciate you. All the infantrymen of the world, no matter if you engage in combat or not, we all know the extreme weight that is on your back, literally and figuratively, that is on your back the entire time that you are serving. And that's kind of how the front line looks. That's what it looks like to get to the front line. It's a lot of gray zones, a lot of artillery, a lot of Mavics, a lot of drones, a lot of confusion, bad intel. Intel changes every week, and yeah, that's enough blabbering. Hope you guys got something from this video. I tried to take you through it. Thanks to my editor for making a nice video out of this, making some animations and stuff. Really appreciate it, dude. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.